we can talk a little bit about synthetic brush. Synthetic brush are made with mostly nylon, and what you have seen or what you are probably already using or you got it from the beginner's kit would be maybe a bunch of these synthetic brush, which is made with nylon threads. And they are not all created the same. There are some good ones and there are some really crappy ones, and you can tell by the price, obviously. For example, all these are synthetic brushes. It's very similar in profile. You can get them in whatever shape and sizes, obviously, any stationery art supply store. I've even seen like Kintsugi workshop using synthetic brush, which is flat, a flat head brush, which I don't understand how you can do like a fine hairline, painting a fine hairline with a blunt, flat shape kind of a brush. So if you want to get a synthetic brush, definitely find something that is more like this in terms of the profile. And this one in particular, it's a pretty interesting brush. I think some of the Kintsugi kit or workshop gives you these kind of brush, and they are made with nylon. It's synthetic, and what it sets on the handle is it's a Maki-e brush substitution, which means it's a synthetic brush, a nylon brush. And what I don't enjoy using these brushes is the material. Cost-wise, it's very cost-efficient. This is only a few bucks. Like for a few dollars, you can get a Maki-e brush. It's like, oh, why not? But for more dedicated, serious learners, you may want to move to a natural hair brush. So what I don't enjoy personally about nylon brush is the yield or the bounce. Nylon brush, I guess, nylon, it's like plasticky. So when you press it, if you put pressure on it, you can tell how hard the hair is. And for this particular one, they somehow use whatever or choose the type of nylon thread that is a little bit hard in terms of the bounce. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You can still use it for, Maki-e use. As mentioned, it's a Maki-e brush. But if you practice with natural hair brush, like when I first started learning lacquer art and Kintsugi, I start with a natural hair brush, like a traditional Maki-e brush, because it's so soft that, and tip is so precise that when I pick up a nylon brush right now, it feels like, oh, I need to put more pressure on it. So if you switch between the brushes, you will need to do some practice, before you actually apply anything to your piece, because you realize that, oh, I used to be putting this amount of pressure to do this line, and then you switch to a nylon brush, it's so much harder that the control will feel different. And for this particular brush, I find the nylon hair a bit too stiff to my liking. And when you press it down on the palette as the strands spread out, you can see that the strand is not as fine, as refined as natural hair. And because it's an extruded material, the tip doesn't taper like natural hair does. It's definitely usable, but after using, these natural hair brush, you will find that, okay, it's not that nice to use a nylon synthetic brush anymore. So these are the synthetic brushes. And if you go for really cheap ones, there are some crappy, sorry, these are really crappy brushes. I bought this random brush from some art supply store because of an emergency situation. I somehow just need a brush that day, and I don't have my own brush with me. So I got these brushes. They are super cheap, made in China. I just go look for a nylon brush so I know I can use it in urushi and use it with turpentine and alcohol and everything without killing the brush. And then I look for the right size. But then look at this brush. I don't know if it shows. After only one use, the hair, the tip of the hair is already flared, and it's almost like it got a perm. So it not only flares, it actually curled outwards. So it's almost impossible to form a sharp tip anymore. So that's why not all brushes are created equal. And speaking of synthetic brush, I do manage to find a pretty good one that I would recommend, which takes me to a different group of brushes. Because of the demand for good Maki-e brushes and the limited supply, so it's good to look at what is available in the market right now. Especially, I talked to a supplier a couple of days ago and realized that okay, we are almost in a crisis right now for Maki-e brush, not only for global international audiences, users, it's also for domestic users in Japan, because nobody can buy or can find Maki-e brush anymore. It has very, very limited supply, very few stores have them in stock. Everybody is waiting for up to 2 months or 3 months wait. Now, we don't know how long the wait will be, because the import of the cat hair has been kind of stuck because the logistics, the supply chain kind of collapsed during these 2 years. So we are seeing extremely limited supply, and even makers have the time to make them. There's no raw material to make them. So that's why it's good to understand what other alternatives are out there. And luckily I found something that I would recommend. So here what we are looking at are they're both Maki-e brushes. One is natural hair, cat hair, and the other one is synthetic hair. Let's talk about natural hair one first. So we don't get like a fancy label like the Master Series, but this is also handmade and very well made in Japan by brush artisans. The system is the same because it's a traditional handmade natural hair Maki-e brush, so we still get the detachable part, so the brush head is adjustable. It's a very delicate brush that is kind of still available. The supply is very limited, so we try to secure some of these. We will put them on our web shop. I actually use them and I like them a lot. So when I talk to the makers, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, happy that you like them, but we have very limited supply. So this is a nice traditional natural hair cat hair Maki-e brush that is also available for you. And then we switch to an interesting brush here. This is actually a synthetic, it's nylon Maki-e brush, and compared to the cheaper version or the beginner version, which some of you guys got it from your Kintsugi workshop or from your beginner's hobby kit, this is like the premium version of synthetic type Maki-e brush. And the name, it's printed on the handle. This is made by Pentel. Pentel is a very well-known Japanese company specializing in stationery and art supply. So what happened was, a few years back, the industry is already seeing the shortage of supply in Maki-e brushes. The Urushi Japanese Lacquer Craft Association in Wajima, Urushi Craft, collaborate with Pentel and see what they can develop as a high quality synthetic substitution brush for Maki-es, because they already foresee that it will be getting more and more difficult to acquire a traditional Maki-e brush because there are so few artisans left in Japan that handmade them. This is the outcome of it. So what you see here is the profile, the design follows or matches, a typical traditional Maki-e brush, which you get this tier kind of a brush head. But then this is permanent, it's not removable. So I don't know why they do it, but I mean, it's kind of nice though to have the same look. good thing is there's no need to keep removing them, less parts to clean, less parts to maintain, because sometimes removing, putting it back, squeezing, pulling the hair, there's some wear and tear to the brush. So this one, you don't need to think about it. No worries. Washing, cleaning the brush is the same. So make sure you do your proper cleaning and you oil the entire brush to loosen up any rushi that gets stuck here before you store them. So same thing, but it's just not removable. And in terms of the hair, I am extremely happy and impressed by it as the synthetic nylon threads compared to the hobby level kind of a brush. Also, it's probably personal, like I mentioned that I'm so used to using a natural hair brush with these super nice and silky kind of pushes, that this nylon brush have almost identical kind of flexibility like the natural hair. So that's why if you use it, it feels almost the same as the natural hairbrush. And I don't know, like maybe with the nanotechnology that we have these days, Pentel actually managed to extrude these nylon threads to have very, very thin profile and very, very fine tip. So, and I am literally very satisfied using this synthetic brush. For a forthcoming time when it will become very difficult to acquire a traditional natural hair Maki-e brush, this would be a very, very good option. For a simple Kintsugi project, I would get the small, which is this one. This is a 17 millimeter size. So I think the other sizes are 20 or something. So it gets longer and longer. But 17 is a pretty decent size to use.